Good afternoon, everybody. Today it's Craig here talking about 6-6 function, composition of function or function compositions. It's kind of a new operation, but it's not particularly difficult. So let's go ahead and get started. Example number 1 here, we have a little bit of review from Algebra 1. We have f of 1. So we have a function and we're looking at a particular value, 1. Notice we have f of x and g of x. You can think of f and g kind of like names, kind of like Fred and George. It's just telling you what function to use. It would be really confusing if we called every function f, because you wouldn't know what we were talking about. That would be like if I called everybody in class Sarah. I just decided that everyone's name was Sarah, and I could just say, hey Sarah, how are you? Hey Sarah, did you do your homework? Sarah, I see you. So it's a little bit confusing. So we try to give our functions different names. So here, I know I'm using the f function because it says f. And instead of plugging in an x, I'm going to be plugging in a 1. So I'm going to write my f function, and I'm going to leave a blank for my value. So 2 times blank, because that's where the x was, plus 4. And instead of plugging in an x, I know I'm going to be plugging in a 1. So now I can say 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 4 is 6, which means that f of 1 equals 6. So the value of f at 1 equals 6. For example number 2, I have g of negative 2. Since there is a g here, that means I must be using the g function. And the g function is x squared plus 3. That means I'm going to write something squared plus 3. Be sure to write those parentheses. It's going to keep you from making any careless mistakes. And I know I'm going to plug in a negative 2. So negative 2 squared is 4, and 4 plus 3 is 7. Which means that g of negative 2 equals 7. Here's the new part. Here's the new part. Here's the new thing. Here's the new thing. Pay attention. This open circle. If you see a closed dot, if it is filled in black, that means multiplication. However, the open circle is called a function composition. That means we're going to take one function and put it into another function. And in this case, we're actually starting with a value. You always start with whatever is closest to the number, so g of negative 3. Notice here you can also write it as f of g of negative 3. The open circle is read f of g of negative 3. So I'm going to start by finding g of negative 3. And since I have the g function, I can very easily go ahead and plug in. So I know that g of negative 3, just like on examples 1 and 2, would be negative 3 squared plus 3, which gives me 9 plus 3, which is 12. I now know that g of negative 3 equals 12. So I'm just going to take that 12 and I'm going to plug it in, which means I know that f of g of negative 3 really just means f of 12. So I'm going to go ahead and find f of 12, just like on example number 1, except for instead of plugging in the other number, I'm plugging in a 12. So I have 2 times 12 plus 14. 2 times 12 is 24, so I have 24 plus 4, which gives me 28. 12 is not my answer. 12 helps me get to my answer, but 28 is my answer. Always start with what is closest to the letter here. So, next up, we have g of f of negative 1. g of f of negative 1. In the same way, g of f of negative 1. Always start with what is closest to the number. I can find out what f of negative 1 is. So remember, my f function is 2x plus 4. So I know that f of negative 1 is going to equal 2 times negative 1 plus 4, which gives me negative 2 plus 4, which is 2. So now, I'm going to take my 2 and I'm going to plug it in and get rid. I know that f of negative 1 equals 2. So now I'm really looking for g of 2. So I can go ahead and say g of 2 equals, well, my g function, in case you've forgotten, is x squared plus 3. So I'm going to have 2 squared plus 3, which gives me 4 plus 3. So I know that g of f of negative 1 equals 7. If you put a number into a composition, you're always going to get a number back out. So if you are putting a number into a composition, you are always going to get a number back out. This is different than the next two examples. On number 5, we're not putting in a number. This time, we're putting in a letter. And if you put in a letter or a variable, you're going to get back out a letter or a variable. So things to remember. If you put in a number, you get out a number. If you put in a letter, you get out a letter. Remember, we're not factoring, we're not solving. Don't get crazy. Don't try to do the quadratic formula or anything like that. Keep that in the back of your mind. So this time, I can't find g of x. There's not a value to find because I'm not given a number. But I know that g of x equals x squared plus 3. So I'm going to go ahead and substitute, which means I'm really looking for f of x squared plus 3. Because g of x equals x squared plus 3. Which means I'm working with my f function, and instead of plugging in an x, instead of plugging in a number, I'm going to plug in a whole other function here. So I'm going to write my f function with a blank. So f of something equals 2 times something plus 4. I just left a blank wherever the x was. I know that I'm looking for f of x squared plus 3, which means wherever I have a blank, I'm putting x squared plus 3. At this point, I found the composition. I just have to simplify. I just have to do a little arithmetic. And I'm going to start by distributing my 2. So I wind up here with 2x squared plus 6 plus 4. I can combine like terms, so I wind up with 2x squared plus 10. Do not take out a GCF. Do not factor. Do not attempt to solve. If you put a letter in, you get a letter out. That's it. You're done. That's the answer. Now, number 5 and number 6 are related but different because on number 6, this time, f of x is on the inside. This time, f of x is on the inside. And I know that f of x equals 2x plus 4, so I can go ahead and replace f of x with 2x plus 4, which means I'm finding g of 2x plus 4. Which means I'm working with my g function, and anywhere I see an x in my g function, I'm going to leave a blank. So I have g of something equals something squared plus 3. I know that I'm plugging in 2x plus 4, which means I'm also plugging in 2x plus 4 into the function itself. Because g of 2x plus 4 just means I plug in 2x plus 4 wherever there was an x. Now a little algebra trick for you here. We've already taken the composition. I just got to simplify with a little arithmetic. I have a binomial squared. When I have a binomial squared, I must write it twice and FOIL. So 2x plus 4 times 2x plus 4. Go ahead. Don't forget to tack on that plus 3 there on the end because I had it out there before. So 2x times 2x gives me 4x squared. 2x times 4 is plus 8x. 2x times 4 is plus 8x. 4 times 4 is 16. And of course, don't forget to bring down that plus 3. It's still hanging out there. I can combine like terms, which means I now have 4x squared plus 16x plus 19. Do not attempt to factor. Do not attempt to solve. Stop right there. You don't take out a GCF. You don't try to slide and divide. Don't do anything else. You're finding a composition. You are not factoring. You are not solving. Remember, if you put in a number, you get out a number. You put in a letter, you get out a letter. So, for example, number 7, the thing to look out for is that f and g changed. We could have any function we want, but the problem will always tell you what they are. You don't have to memorize them. They will always be listed. And you could have a j of x, or an h of x, or a p of x, or a q of x. They can use any letter they want. The only one we typically don't use is x, because x of x would be confusing. Alright, so I'm starting by finding g of negative 4. Always start with what's closest to the letter. So g of negative 4 equals negative 4 squared minus 1, which gives me 16 minus 1, which is 15. 15 is not my answer. I take 15 and I plug it in now because I know that g of 4 is 15. So I'm now finding f of 15. So f of 15 equals 3 times 15 minus 4. 3 times 15 is 45. 45 minus 4 is 41. My answer is 41. Done. If I put in a number, I get out a number. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can't try number 8 on your own. Assuming you already paused the video and you're coming back, let's go ahead and try this one here. So I have f of 3. Remember, always start with what's closest to that number then. So f of 3 means that I have 3 times 3 minus 4. Well, 3 times 3 is 9. 9 minus 4 is 5. That now means I take my 5 and I plug it in because I know f of 3 equals 5. So now I'm looking for g of 5. So I come to the side. G of 5 equals 5 squared minus 1. 5 squared is 25. 25 minus 1 is 24. My answer is 24. If you put in a number, you get out a number. Number 9, we're back to letters. Back to letters. Remember, these are a little trickier, but not too bad. Because just because I can't find the value of g of x, I still know what g of x equals. So I just substitute. So I have f of x squared minus 1. Again, always starting with what's closest to the letter or number. That means I'm working with my f function, and I'm going to plug in x squared minus 1 anywhere that there was an x. So I have 3 times something minus 4. And I know that I'm plugging in x squared minus 1, which means everywhere I had an x, I put x squared minus 1. I can go ahead and distribute. 3x squared minus 3 minus 4. Combine like terms. 3x squared minus 7. And I'm done. Do not solve. Do not do the quadratic formula. Do not do crazy stuff. I just asked for the composition. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can't do the last one on your own. Alright, assuming you tried it out, let's see if you got it right. We start with f of x on the inside. We're going to go ahead and replace it with the 3x minus 4. So it's g of 3x minus 4. That means I'm going to write my g function with a blank for x. So blank squared minus 1. In that blank, I know I'm going to put a 3x minus 4, but ding, 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 ding. Binomial squared, binomial squared, binomial squared. Write it twice in FOIL. So I have 3x minus 4 times 3x minus 4. Don't forget that minus 1. Don't forget that minus 1. All right, I can FOIL it out. 3x times 3x, 9x squared. 3x times 4 is negative 12x. 3x times negative 4 is negative 12x. 4 times 4, or negative 4 times negative 4, is a positive 16. And again, don't forget the plus 1. Go through and combine like terms. 9x squared minus 24x plus 7, oh, excuse me, not plus 17, that's a mistake. It was a minus. Look out, look out. Everybody can make mistakes. This is a minus 1, which means that's a 15. Even though there is a GCF, I do not take it out. I am not factoring. I am not solving. I'm done right here. Remember, don't get crazy. Don't factor, don't solve. Just find the composition. Thank you.